Now, we do want to open the floor up to questions. Just tell us who you are, who you're with, and ask a question. Randy.
Randy Randall.
Whoops.
Randy Randall, another Cajun. Hal, you need to show that one chart with all the other estimates for climate sensitivity and show where yours comes out. You've done a TRCS version off of data. A lot of other guys use models. You start to show that chart.
Yeah, I need to back up a few. It's one I skipped over.
That's the most important thing here.
Yeah, it doesn't show all the latest research, but
Hal, I was asked if I was part of your
Can I
crew.
still bring it up?
I'm his aide de camp.
Okay. Can you load my slides again? It's not up. Anyway, I think I know what Randy's asking about.
There you go.
Okay.
See, now you know why I had to become a dumb Marine Corps fighter pilot.
One of the smartest guys here, don't let him fool you. Okay, this is the chart? Okay, this was a chart made by Pat Michaels and Chip Knappenberger of the Cato Institute maybe 2 years ago.
Get next to the mic if you can.
This is peer-reviewed research. This is what the latest IPCC report said, the uncertainty range for equilibrium climate sensitivity, which is a bigger warming than transient climate sensitivity. It's about 1.8 times bigger. This is a warming that occurs after a bunch of projected things happen after you double CO2. But it takes more than 1,000 years to get these larger temperatures, and they're very uncertain. We don't even think they should be used for public policy. We like the transient climate sensitivity number better because it does a better job of predicting what temperatures might do in the next couple hundred years. All of this research has been published since the cutoff for reviewing research of the AR5 report. This is for equilibrium. They're coming out about an average of about 2, but EPA is using statistically values as high as 10. And there's just no justification. None of this research has been included in the AR5 report. Our numbers are down here, less than 2.1. Lewis and Curry last September have numbers that are very close to ours. Spencer and Bracewell are in this. Willie Soon and Lord Monckton, David Legates and Briggs are very close to these numbers. So all the latest research, and this is focused on the data, not models. Some of this includes some modeling. But as you focus on what the data says, you get these low numbers. But EPA is using 10, not 2.
Hey, thank you, Hal. Other questions? Here's one.
All right, yeah, we've got time for 2 questions.
Tom, you made mention of some mistakes from NOAA. Can you elaborate on
Alex
that?
Pope.
Alex Pope. I'm part of this team up here from NASA.
All right, if I can get this on. Yeah, the big mistakes was the Carl study that was widely publicized as ending the so-called 18-20-year flatline, and there were some big errors in it. First, it's a 2-step error process. You recall that Hadley 3 was the old British climate standard. It was changed to Hadley 4, and they did that by adding about 400 Russian and Canadian stations near the poles. All right? What it did, because all of these were located in little villages or small cities, they were all within their own urban heat islands. The net effect was that temperatures on Hadley 4 were translated upward. Translation is a mathematical term where you take a data set and just move it up. And it was consistent with the trend, but it allowed them to claim that this was the warmest year ever. Okay, that's step 1. Step 2, what Carl did, is that he linked those urban heat islands across vast parts of the Arctic that were uninhabited and said, we're going to average the temperature between these two to establish a reading for these vast uninhabited areas. And they all became warmer. On the ocean, he made another mistake. He substituted relatively faulty ship intake temperature readings for very accurate buoys that we had set in the ocean. And we were putting more and more buoys in the ocean, and he wanted to still put the weighting of those ship intake readings, and that would make it warmer too. It's the same thing as you took a bowl of cereal in the morning, filled it 60% with oatmeal, 40% with arsenic, and then said, hey, this stuff is less than half bad. Eat it, all right? I wouldn't even get Tom Carl to eat that mixture. If you corrupt data, you have corrupted data. And that is what this so-called end of the flat line is. It's corrupted data, it is invalid, and they ought to be ashamed of themselves.
Okay, there we go. A couple of things. If you want a copy of who these people are and what their conclusions are, there's a bunch of them on that table by the third door back there, and there's a bunch of them up here, so you can all take these home with you, and you can show them to anybody you want to, because these guys will stand behind this. The other thing is, I know we had one more question over here that we can take, and then we're probably going to have to break this off because of the time, but these guys will be around for a while, so just walk on up here and ask them some questions.
Hi, I'm Adam Wildavsky. I'm representing myself. I have a question for Colonel Cunningham. You had a slide where you showed the warmest argument in four elements, and I wondered if you had got that from a warmist or you had created it themselves. I've had trouble pinning them down to make an actual argument.
Which slide was that, the warmest of?
The warmest, not the most warm, but the position of the CAGW proponents. They say that CO2 is increasing, that mankind is responsible, that the consequences will be likely disastrous. But you talking about that slide right there? The hypothesis. Thank you. That's the word. Yes.
No, the next slide is the one. Do the next slide.
No, the previous one, the one we just had. I'm just curious about the origins of that, because I'd like to get them to state their position so clearly.
Well, this is.
He wants to know where you got that. Did that come from some statement by the warmists, or did you kind of call it out? I mean,
That is a generalization of the claims by the alarmists, period. I mean, that's what they're operating on. Now, frankly, for me personally, I don't see anything abnormally high about the carbon dioxide if you put it in context of history. Now, if you want to compare it this year to last year or this year to 10 years ago, so we've been establishing a little more human carbon dioxide. So what?
EPA uses some of that in their endangerment finding. The EPA has used some of these things in their so-called endangerment finding, where they claim that CO2 is a danger, including things like sea level rise. And by the way, sea level rise has not accelerated. In fact, where I live in the Gulf of Maine, sea level has not only not risen in the last 10 years, it's actually dropped by about 3 millimeters. Sea level is rising at a regular, steady 6 to 7 inches per century with no acceleration. And it's basically due to the thermal expansion of the oceans, because the great giant ice sheets are gone. But EPA is using sea level rise as buttressing their endangerment, that we're in danger because of sea level rise. And you saw that climate refugees slide earlier today. All that is quietly disappearing because the sea levels aren't going up.
I think you could find these general statements in President Obama's National Climate Assessment, if you've read that, or you could find it in the IPCC AR5 report, the summary for policymakers. All of these themes are in there.
We are already over our time, so I guess we can get one last comment, and then I'm cutting it off.
The total concentration on CO2 has been with temperature change. This is essentially it. As I see it, you double CO2, we block about 3.7 watts per square meter to space. If you take the window region out to 40 watts per square meter and ask what's left is about 60% evaporation and rain. So I see the way, I've been working hard on this a number of years, that the CO2 gain is going to go more in increased hydrologic cycle, rainfall, and less in temperature rise. And my speculation is a lot like Lindzen's was and others, warming of only 0.2, 0.3, 0.4 degrees C with a doubling, much less. However, the hydrologic cycle will increase about 2.5 to 3% extra rain, and that's probably beneficial. It'll rain more where it's already raining. And we're not going to see much warming. It just, the whole concentration on warming, I predict I'll be pushing up daisies when the verification comes in, but I don't think we're going to see much warming. I think all of you have overstressed.
Well,
the warming.
the 1 degree C was the maximum.
Yeah, no,
Right.
the 1 degree is with radiation. You all said you block radiation. Radiation responds, the warming responds to give radiation to balance what you block. You want to increase out so you get equilibrium. But the hydrologic cycle is part of this, and it's going to reduce warming a great deal.
Dr. Gray, I agree with you. We were trying to bound the problem and show that, a maximum warming is not scary, and we shouldn't be regulating CO2 emissions. I had a chart in there that showed the 80 watts per meter squared of latent heat carried up. If your model makes a 5% error in the cycle you're talking about, it wipes out what CO2 could do over 250 years. So I generally agree with you. And if you looked at the one chart, which I didn't get to explain very well, if you assume that we're still getting some warming from the little ice age, which I think we are probably, then our estimate of transient climate sensitivity goes down like 0.75 degrees, which means the water feedback is negative, just like you're saying.
Yeah, you've given the worst case scenario. That was our intention.
Right.
All right. Well,
Hey,
there's
listen,
no
we
better way
really
than to end
appreciate
this
the audience being here.
than a rousing
Thank you,
scientific
guys.
debate.